Hi, I'm Rehan. I'm a 25-year-old lawyer and I want to reverse engineer my vision of a fulfilling life. And so I thought I would have conversations with people having different experiences than mine and hopefully learn a thing or two. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome on to Reverse Engineer. Today I have on Kranti, who is someone that if I had to speak on completely, she is the wife of the person I first interned with when I was still in school. And more importantly, she is the startup founder and owner of a company which sells kid products. And we're going to speak about a variety of topics here today, some of which encompass what it takes to be a startup founder, what it takes to be a mother of two children, while being a startup founder, what it takes to work in a family business at one point and then exit the family business, seeing how its metamorphosis from an unprofessional organization to a professional organization takes place. And how do you balance all of these hats and acts together while still keeping some form of sanity for yourself? So, encompassing a wide variety of topics.
Sure.
I hope you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Excited actually.
I'm sure. So first, let's get into what does your company do today? Could you please tell us more about it?
I'm the founder of Neon. Neon basically is a platform to offer parents products that help raise confident kids. What I found is that in the market, while there were a lot of platforms offering moms of my generation, great clothes, great toys, great prams and diapers and all of that, there was no scaled platform to offer development products. And the idea is to empower the new generation moms, the moms who are now, probably born in 95 in the whole digital era.
Is that why Neon?
Neon, yeah,
Neon?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But to, what I saw that these moms are, completely, they want to raise world citizens. They are exposed to the world media because they're born in the digital age. And their focus, is beyond the basic roti, kapda or makan. Their focus for their kids is the mental development or even all-round development for the kids. And we want to build a scaled platform offering this to the moms. We're trying to make it convenient, pocket-friendly, and hence we have rental and purchase options both. And coming to Neon, Neon actually stands for new, which is neo, and own. So the new way of owning things.
Ah, very interesting. And I know that you were telling me topic we're both passionate about is books.
Yes.
And a lot of your business is providing these books.
Yes.
Kids today just do not read. I don't understand why. It's the best source of knowledge one could ever have. You get to live and understand people's experiences who have lived successful lives, broaden your thought processes like you've never have before. But why do you think today people just don't want to read and it's frowned upon or looked upon? Is it because kids just can't concentrate today? What has led to the brain drain that we see?
So I think COVID had a massive impact on it, as well as the screens. The proliferation of screens right into your hand, which was the mobile phone or tablets, has had the biggest impact on reading. I want to contradict your statement that it's not frowned upon. I'm sorry, it's not frowned upon. Kids don't want to read. I'm sorry, kids do want to read. I think what they want to read has slightly shifted. And we should be able to present it to them as easily as a screen is available to them, in as interesting a format as the screen is available to them. So I think the onus on the parents has increased a little bit to make it available conveniently, easily, but in a variety, as well as in an interesting format. So that's where we come in. What we observed is that, if the child is provided the right kind of books, a variety of books to choose from, as well as, ample ease of getting the books, they're willing to read. They enjoy reading, in fact. There's also conversations, like if the conversation at home or at school with friends is around books versus TV shows or TV characters, they're more encouraged to read. Kids who get hooked on actually don't want to leave. They're crazy readers. Therefore, at Neon, we thought that, we understand parents are busy. We understand that today in the digital world, everything is available, at the click of a button at a pretty good cost as well as convenience. So we said, why not provide the same for books? Also, tying it back to the aim to provide a development platform, what we found is that books is the cheapest and easiest way to achieve a massive amount of developmental goals for the child. Right from general knowledge, overall knowledge, vocabulary, fluency, critical thinking, structured thinking, to softer skills like empathy, because every time you're reading, relating to a character, you're putting yourself into the shoes of that character. imagination, creativity, the amount of developmental goals that reading alone touches. You don't need expensive classes. You just need a book which costs a few ₹100.
So is a lot of your business trying to explain that to the parents and not for them to
Yes.
take the convenient route of just giving a
Yeah,
kid a phone?
absolutely. So one is we educate the parent about this, and then we make it as convenient for them. So there's an app. The app has, for every single age, there is more than 2,000 books of unique titles available for selection. There's a convenience of home delivery and the cost benefit. So today books have become expensive.
They have, yeah.
Each book costs 400-500 rupees. So we provide a 4 to 5x cost benefit. So even on the smallest plan, an average book costs about 80-90 rupees.
Yeah.
On the annual plans, it's 66 rupees.
But is
per
this
book.
books that you as a company have bought and are reselling as a wholesale
We
retailer?
buy the books.
You'll-
We buy the books, but we don't resell. We circulate.
You all circulate by
So
renting it out.
yeah, by renting it out.
Got
So
it.
all our inventory, I would say 95% of our inventory is first-hand books bought from publishers through the distributors. And because we do care about the quality, both in terms of the material as well as the physical quality of the book. These books are the latest publications. So we've seen there's a shift from huge text-heavy books to
More graphic.
graphic novels,
seen
pictures,
that.
colors. And, I personally, and as a philosophy, the company, we don't see any harm, even in diary format books, as long as the child is reading versus on a screen. Let them read whatever it is.
But for your personal reading, have you moved to a Kindle or you're still on the hard copy? Can you?
Both. It's a
You
mix
found-
of both.
you found a
Definitely.
mix of
Kindle
both?
is very convenient when you're traveling.
I agree.
You have 4 books at a time that you can read,
Yeah.
etc. And once in a while, you want the hardcover. And I also, by the way, when I'm reading something a little heavy conceptually, and I read a lot of nonfiction, I feel that I retain a lot more or analyze concepts a lot more when I'm the
Hard
physical
copy.
copy of the
I'm the
book.
same because I like underlining and making little
Yeah.
notes on the side with the hard copy
Yeah.
book. It's also storages, but for the storage standpoint, the Kindle is always more convenient.
Yeah.
But now with your young kids, and though they're getting slightly older in age now, a common theme I've realized in terms of parenting is to make sure they don't have a phone up until the age of 12 or
Absolutely,
14.
yes.
Is that something that you did as well?
Yes, completely. My kids don't have a phone as yet. They're
Okay.
12, 11 and a half and 13, almost going to be 12 and 14. They don't have phones of their own. There is a shared phone in the house which whoever needs can, access a school WhatsApp group or whatever needs to be accessed. And I'm seeing this theme actually across younger parents.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to tell you, that reading is not being frowned upon.
Yeah.
Parents want to do it. It's just that
They don't know how to go
they
about
don't
it.
know how to do it conveniently,
Yeah.
cost effectively and consistently. And that's what Neon solves.
But as a working mother yourself, have you seen, I'm sure there have been occasions and a lot where you've been a helicopter mom, right? Because you have to be at work, but you have to also ensure that the kids are doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
I've come from a household where my mom was also working as a lawyer, as a solicitor for 10, 12 hours a day, as you've seen
Yeah.
with Denzel yourself.
Yeah.
How do you navigate overseeing what the kids are doing versus what they tell you that they are doing? It's like a fine line between the two, because I
Yeah.
would tell my mom, you know what, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, like I'm doing my homework, but I'm
Yeah.
actually not doing my homework and I'm doing whatever else. And one day she would realize that.
Yeah.
What, as working mothers today, which you've seen more
Yeah.
than ever before,
Yeah.
how does one sort of maintain that balance? And still
First
be
of all,
there?
I want to say it's not a working mother, it's a working couple or the parents. Both are working, right? So that's the issue, that both parents are not at home. Second, so how I look at it first is that, in India, at least, we are blessed that, you don't have to raise a child alone.
Yeah.
You have an entire ecosystem available to you. Like it takes a village to raise a kid, and it's true.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, creating that ecosystem, enlisting any help possible. So when my kids were my older one was about 8 years old, my in-laws moved in with me. That was a great boon. So grandparents at home. Second is an army of maids, help, everybody, slotted with stuff that they will do. So this ensures that their schedule is on track. This ensures that, all their physical needs at least are met. Then it comes to making sure that, what is it that they're doing. First is that you need to have it's a very established thing for our family. We reiterate it at any and every given occasion, maybe even on a daily basis, that we are a hardworking family. We have goals as a family. You won't believe it. On the 1st of Jan every year, we set goals for the family and for that year. And everybody is seeing what can be done to get through the goal, and the family helps each other to get to those goals. So the kids have some sort of clarity what they're working towards.
Yeah.
Right. Thirdly is that, I engage them, or rather we engage them in activities, structured activities that they like, with ample time for self-discovery and free play. Free play and self-discovery is discussed regularly. What did you do? What are you working on these days? Is there some, it could be even a book that my child is reading in free time, a podcast that a child is listening to, or a game that the child is playing. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't hold them too tight when it comes to their free play time. As long as it's yielding to some productive goal loosely while giving them recreational time. They need recreational time, and let them have it. How they're doing in school, monitoring them. Also, I think it's a daily conversation. So bedtime, they're 12 and 14, but we still have a bedtime ritual.
Yeah.
We put them to bed, and you won't believe it, after the lights are out for half an hour, they're yapping.
I'm sure.
They come alive at that time. And initially, I used to be in this regiment, like, oh, it's 9:30 and you have to sleep. How are you going to get up? And over a period of time, both my husband and I realized that they're sharing so much after the lights went out that it's fine, just let them share. And that sharing is more valuable than anything else in the world. And, they tell you, Mama, I didn't do this today. I did this today.
But at least you want that safe space to share.
Yeah.
Which is the most important thing. You don't want that to ever go. I'm also quite close to my parents, so I share everything.
Yeah.
Most of it.
90 to
95%.
But it's fine. So did I share everything with my parents? No. Did I turn out okay? Most probably, yes. I think we have to trust them. Beyond a point, you have to trust them.
But do you think that your experiencing your two kids have shaped the way that you conduct your business today? Is that the
100%.
Is that the use case that you saw at home and realized I now need to create this for others?
Completely. I've spoken about this so much. So my older son, Ayan, is a crazy avid reader. And in fact, he is the inspiration behind Neon, where focusing on books came in. He gave me the initial idea. And he inhales books, I would like to say. And the younger one, Aaron, does not want to read.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a time when, Ayan was reading so much that Aaron felt pressured to say that he was reading. And he would come back saying, oh, I finished this book in one day. And actually, he's not read it. And then he confessed one day. And I was miserable personally that day that I put that kind of pressure on him. And then we figured a way to involve him into reading. So 3 to 4 pages were read aloud to him on a daily basis before sleeping. Even when he became, say, 9 or 10 years old. So there's no stigma that if you're 9 or 10 and you are not feeling like reading it to yourself, but at least you're spending 15 minutes interacting with the book while somebody else is reading it.
Yeah.
Which helped. So I think my struggle of trying to get Aaron to read and seeing how well Ayan is able to perform in social settings, in free-flowing sessions and academic settings because of his reading, both made me understand the importance as well as made me understand or empathize with moms who struggle and develop tools which help those moms.
I'm with you.
So
that actually makes a lot of sense because growing up, I was a non-reader.
Yeah.
I was a heavy gamer. I used to be up all night, up morning, and I used to compete in badminton as well, like your son is. So I played professional badminton all the way up to the national level growing up.
Insane.
So I actually empathize with a lot of what Denzel tells me about your son in that progression of like an athlete, but trying to maintain some form of life outside. And which is very, very difficult. So when you speak about reading, it actually gives you a sense of solace, which helps in that position. But you were a CEO of a publicly listed company at one point prior to opening your venture today. At that company that you were a part of was a family company of sorts. Before, and from a very unprofessional setting, you said it metamorphosized into a professionally run company eventually. Originally, when you come into a company of that nature, there are a lot of self-doubts that come in, like, where A, is this right for me? Do I deserve to be here? On B is like, am I doing this just because my family is in it? Or is this actually the way I want to go? You've been in that setting then you've opened a venture of your own today. What are the two differences that you've noticed of having something which is family run yourself versus being the face of a company which you are today? Like, what was that change? Because they're two substantial changes.
So some of the things you said are very true. When I joined Shemaroo, I was working in Pepsi for the first 2 years of my career. I was in the marketing team of Kurkure, but our office was in Gurgaon. And when I wanted to come back to Bombay and settle down, get married, etc., I decided to join Shemaroo, which was run by my uncles. And when I joined in the first few years, and I would say even throughout for many years, that doubt, self-doubt on
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, am I doing this? Both, am I getting this kind of respect or whatever because I'm family? Am I doing this or continuing to do this because this is family? Those questions came and the answers were not always comfortable. There were many uncomfortable answers over there. But I think you always analyzed a few things, at least I analyzed a few things. Number one, am I excited to go back to work every day? And that always came out as a yes to me because at Shemaroo, through my whole life, I joined in 2006 to start that digital division when, the definition of broadband was 128 kbps. So it was an unheard of division. I did a lot of internal startups for them, built out businesses, built out revenue. And that completely aligned with my skill set and what excited me. So it was getting to do exciting things, was getting to learn a lot. And I felt somewhere I was contributing to, making this amazing brand into a professional setup, a brand which, even when the company, which was hitting way beyond its weight in the impact it was making to people. So while, say, the revenues of the company, may have been X, the impact and the resonance people had with the brand was more than what some company making 10x the revenue.
Yeah, of course.
And that always fascinated me that, you were sitting on a brand which has so much recognition, so much love. Anywhere you went, and if you said, Shemaroo, people, we know Shemaroo. We saw this. I spent so many weekends just watching Shemaroo movies or tapes or went to the library. And the true customer connect made you believe that this brand had so much potential. And how do you translate that? How do you unlock that? And I think the best thing about and hand it to the family, so much of freedom to do what you want to do, so much of trust, so much of enablement. Yeah, did I get some of it because I was family? Yes.
Of course.
And that was an uncomfortable thing, truth to accept. But I accepted it as a privilege and decided to deliver commensurate to that privilege. A very famous Marvel character said that with great power comes great responsibility.
Of course, 100%.
Yeah.
But you said something so powerful now. You said that you were working for something that was bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
So, which allowed you to end up enjoying the work even more so, which is a sense of purpose that you've given yourself, right?
Yeah.
Take that into your current venture today. Do you feel like that same level of purpose is allowing you to work as hard as you are given the difficult moments by being a startup owner?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what is the driving force when things get hard, right? Because otherwise people will quit.
Absolutely.
And it's very easy to quit in today's day and age with the amount of options that are available.
Yeah.
So by seeing how generations have unfolded, I'm obviously a lot younger. Have you seen a change in mindset when it comes to people my age versus people who are your age who have the perseverance to stay in those uncomfortable situations for longer? I ask you that question because I see people my age, when things get harder, quite often they take the easy way out and they search for the next best thing and the next best thing, and the consistency is never ending. Have you noticed that pattern yourself?
Actually, I don't think it's to do with your generation. I think it's to do with stage of life. I'm sure, my uncles found it difficult to deal with my generation. Every generation is different, and I see, in fact, that your generation is very focused, very, very driven. What they need is that they value time, I feel, more than anything else. And if they feel they're getting bang for the buck with respect to their time, how that time is getting used, I think you have their loyalty, you have their commitment, you have all of them. So you have to, one is to give them a larger sense of purpose, but also let them understand how much they are learning, growing, contributing, what a difference they are being able to make.
So validation.
Not only validation, I think the sense of
being a part of
empowering them, letting them do something, not making age and experience a barrier for them to achieve or do anything. They don't seek validation from external. They understand validation themselves internally. You don't need to praise them. They know whether what they have done is worth it or not. So giving them the opportunity to feel validated by themselves.
Yeah, responsibility. Yeah.
I think they're fabulous workers. In fact, every year at Neon, we have at least 4 to 5 freshers who join us. And I've seen kids, 22-year-olds doing the same work which a 32-year-old would do. I'm probably doing it better. Bringing in more tech, more ideas, questioning why are we doing it this way, making it happen at maybe 1/10 the resources. I thrive on the energy of a 22 to 25-year-old. Like that's my power bank, I feel.
Yeah. But what is the unspoken part of coming in as a young professional yourself into a family-run company, and when it was in its unprofessional setting? What goes behind the scenes in your thought process when you were to join that? Did you think it was a daunting task? And was that same excitement or like nerves when you started that company of your own? Or what was the differences that you felt? Did you feel like you had a backbone?
Actually, at that time, I feel I was just too young and naive. I had an offer from Marico. I was to join Marico as in their brand team in the hair oil part division. And just 10 days before my joining date, I quit my job with the Marico offer and came to Bombay. Once I reached Bombay, on one of the trips, I don't know, my uncle sat me down and said that, we are trying to professionalize. There's so much opportunity. There's so much happening in the media industry. Why don't you come and join us? And then I gave it a thought, and that part of the family had always, kind of intrigued me, interested me. Though, like as I said, my dad was a doctor, and we were never part of the business, my family, like the four of us. At some point, I had also studied Marico, which was a family-owned business which had professionalized.
Yes.
And I said, if I'm getting a chance to, be
a part
of that process, why not? I think at that time, Denzel was also like, Randi, why don't we at least give it a shot? If it doesn't work out, you can always do something else.
Yeah.
So it was more like, okay, family hai, bulaya hai, and itna exciting cheez kar rahe hain, so let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And then I stayed and did a lot of exciting stuff. I think it has personally enriched me like a lot more than probably what I would have done at a very established organization. And I always, in fact, have this lens when I'm evaluating, people to join my team throughout my career, is that, was this person a product of the system, or is the system a product of this person? And I always value the latter because, somebody spent 15 years in HUL or, a great law firm, and they've learned everything, all the best practices. But are they capable of setting up that system, thinking through those processes, and I think...
Because that's the independent identity. Because otherwise they're just a cog in the wheel.
Exactly.
Per se, and that's a replaceable cog.
Exactly.
How do you not be, like, how is then your worth recognizes for something that you create yourself?
Yeah.
But that enterprising value that someone brings is what society rewards, but it's also a rare commodity to see, because people are afraid to take that plunge, like the plunge that you've taken with the startup that you have started. It's a very difficult plunge because there's a lot of risk involved, there's a lot of stress involved, there's a lot of time involved where the buck stops with you and all the face. At least at Shemaroo, there was a system around you.
Yeah.
Here you have created that system for yourself. What is the process that goes behind in creating a system for yourself? Like, let's say if tomorrow, eventually, if I want to create a system for myself, is there like a mindset or like a process that you followed or you would advise?
I don't think process is something that I'm able to articulate or verbalize right now. But I would like to touch upon the mindset. The first mindset is to know and accept that every single day you'll doubt yourself. Every single day, even today, I ask myself, did I do the right thing? By quitting, by starting this, by investing this kind of money and time, effort, is this going to work? And being able to live with that answer, sometimes it's a solid yes, sometimes it's a maybe, sometimes it's negative, and yet get up and go and say that, fine, I'm going to make the most of this day.
Yeah.
And at least today, I'm going to make the most of today and try my best. Second is, I think having come from a custodian of a 60-year-old brand to a brand which you are setting up, there's also a liberation. Because when you're a custodian of a 60-year-old brand, you are always thinking about that you're handling somebody else's legacy.
Yes,
you're responsible to so many people.
So much, yeah.
And to, Neon, that the buck stops at you. So you can take the risk. You can make a change overnight. You can...
Flexibility.
You can be very agile. Also, credit to the fact that, I spent those many years on Shemaroo. So have access to a lot of people. And that has also really helped me because I don't have to, literally for anything that I feel I need, whether it's help with raising capital or whether it's network is available. And or media or for almost anything I think of, literally within a day, I'm able to reach relevant people, do relevant things very easily. And that network is available not through someone else. It's the network I have built, I have created, people who respect me, with whom I have worked in the past, who've seen my working ethics, who know that eventually I will, or believe, I don't know whether rightly or wrongly, but believe that she'll do something great.
But what is that thing about people? Because at the end of the day, every business is a people business, people-driven business. Whether it's in the law, where I believe it's very important to be very good public-facing, so that you end up getting clientele, and then execution is execution. But even in terms of your business, it's sales. You need to give a product, and then you need to convince people to buy your product.
Absolutely.
So again, it's people-driven. Network is your most important asset, I feel, all the time, because that's the help that you have and that you derive from. But what is something about people that you've understood, or which helped you develop the network that you have, or helped you sell to them?
The most important network, people truth is that everybody is doing their best. Everybody is coming to work to do their best. Everybody is trying to do whatever they are doing they are doing the best. And if you understand the reason of what is driving them, if they're not being able to do their best, I'm coming to employees. If they're getting stuck somewhere, not performing, or you feel they can do more, or even how do you help them maximize what they're doing, is that if they're not doing their best, is there a skill gap issue which you help bridge, or enablement issue, information issue, environment issue? And if you're able to fix that, then you can really help an employee. Extend that to a customer. Even the way,
are you adding value to their lives?
Are you helping them succeed? If you have only one mindset, whoever is on the opposite side, Rehan, I'm here, can I help you succeed? I'm selling to the mothers. You know what I told you, that the mother wants to do it for the child, but she's not able to do it. Can I help her succeed? The child wants to read the book, but
can I help them?
Can I help the child succeed? My employees want to work their best. They want to do their best every single day. Can I help them succeed?
But then I have a question there. Often that's a very, very beautiful mindset to have, and I try to inculcate that myself as well. But a lot of the thoughts then come to, I guess the mind goes into a transactional standpoint. If I'm always the giver, where am I the taker? Because some people you would want to be helped in the same way you give help, or no?
You don't have to worry.
The universe will bless you in a way.
It will come. I mean, it comes without asking.
When you give out that energy, it will come back.
It just comes because, as I said, most people want to do their best, right? So when they are getting from you, they will willingly give you. Whenever I am in a B2B, and I did a lot of B2B sales work at Shemaroo. Like I set up all the DTH channels with Tata Sky, Airtel. In my entire journey at Shemaroo, I worked with a lot of big conglomerates, whether it was Airtel, Reliance, Tata Sky, Vodafone, blah, blah. When I would go to pitch them a new product, go to pitch a new idea or a new relationship, or from scratch, they don't know who's Shemaroo and why they should, do an alliance with them. First thing is, what is it that I can offer them?
Now,
it's not that I want to go for the best revenue share deal. It's not that I want 30% revenue share, this, that, nothing. First, give. Just give first. It will just come. And not come because the world, providence and all. Because they also want people who do good for them. It's selfish.
Reciprocity.
Yeah.
Like if you give, the likelihood of them giving you back is always high.
Yeah, because they also want to encourage people who give them. No? Yeah. So they will give you.
But do you think that affects, I think that what you're saying is such good advice for all facets of life.
Absolutely.
Like you give more to a relationship, the more you water that cup, the more you will receive.
See, tell me one thing. Yeah. What is in your hand? What you give or what you receive?
Of course.
You have only control over what you can give. You have zero control over what you will get. Zero. Even if it's contractually written, there is no 100% guarantee that you will get it.
I have a question again. Same process, same thought process. When you have do you not have expectations when you give them?
You may have an expectation for sure. Why not? Will it always come exactly as per the expectation? Maybe not. You have to keep your expectation flexible.
Yeah.
Don't keep it rigid. Have an expectation for sure. You don't want to be a pushover.
Of course.
And by no means am I a pushover.
Yeah, of course.
So have the expectation. Will it materialize in the same time frame, in the same form as what you wanted? Maybe, maybe not. Will you get it? For sure.
Of course. And if you feel like you're not getting it, then you know that's when you draw the line.
Yeah, you also know.
Yeah. That's when, from dynamics, you know when to draw the line. Because I'm sure there have been situations where you've given a lot more and then you've just felt like you're the only one pouring the cup.
Actually, I don't measure it like that. I don't think it helps to measure it like that. By that you don't achieve anything than misery.
Okay.
By measuring it. If I just feel I get recommended a lot more because they know she'll get it done. Yeah. That she will go with that attitude.
My mom tells me the same thing. Yeah, you go out there and you just be a solution provider, and at the end of the day, the work will follow.
Don't measure. Again, if you measure that, oh, I gave so much to this relationship, I'm not getting, then it's the same measurement, na, that मुझे यही time frame में चाहिए, ऐसे ही चाहिए. Yeah. Actually, I've not always had this attitude. Maybe I always thought of having this attitude, but I didn't always. But we did this amazing workshop at Shemaroo in 2018. It's called the Abinger Way, I think. It's called the Abinger System of Thinking. There are 3 books also written on this topic by them. And there's an institute. And they teach you this way of thinking. And at Shemaroo was a very growth-oriented organization. So we did a lot of learning tools, workshops, even in our quest to professionalize. But this was really, I think, a breakthrough moment for me. From my whole life, my life changed after that. Even with how I deal with my kids, my spouse, my house help, my family, my workers,
this
my
was the
team.
Abinger
method or way, whatever. But there's this Abinger Institute. They say that the first thing to do is think. Whoever you're dealing with, think of what are that person's needs.
Put yourself in their shoes, basically.
Put yourself in their shoes. And then think, what is it that I can do to help this person?
Yeah.
Even at work, the solutions you find, it also makes a lot of departures very easy, right? So if you feel somebody's not performing, it makes it very easy to have that conversation or even think through that. That maybe what help I'm able to provide right now, the opportunity I'm able to provide this person is not the right opportunity for this person. And I can help by pointing out this person in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it has happened. I've had to sack people. I've had to let them go. And what they have found thereafter has been 10x better, or they performed 10x better than what they performed here.
Yeah.
And I'm able to have that conversation with them with that light.
Yeah, to guide them in that direction. But do you think the same sort of thinking has benefited? Because obviously, as you rightly mentioned, it's a working couple. Often those relationships can be very hard as well because the stresses from work often percolate, sometimes back home, sometimes not back home. 2 people are incredibly busy. Yeah. What has been some of the things that has worked for you and to make a relationship successful long term, especially when 2 sides are working? And when you have kids on top of that.
80% of the credit is to Denzel. First, he never brings stress home. I take stress home.
Yeah.
He never brings stress home. He gives immense amount of time to the kids and to our relationship. He prioritizes family and relationship over everything else, even more than me. And from the beginning, I remember being at Pepsi in my first or second year of work, and I would get 5 calls from him in a day. My bosses would be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, why is your boyfriend calling? We were not even married. Why is your boyfriend calling you 5 times in a day? But he prioritized. It's not that he was not busy. It's not that he didn't have other work. But he prioritized relationships. Okay, I'll tell you a side note. He has a mentor at work, which everybody knows who's his mentor.
Yeah.
But it was his particular advice to Denzel in our courting years that you have to invest in a relationship. And I think the way Denzel took that on has made such a big difference to us even today. Second is, I think, alignment in values and having the tough conversations upfront. So even before we got married, we had discussed on religion, whether I will convert or not, how the kids will be brought up, in which religion the kids will be brought up, why. And we were both so aligned that those were never questions that came up later in life for us. We had kids 6 years after we got married, but probably 2 years before we got married, we had full clarity on how our kids were going to be brought up. Talking about difficult things, and if you don't agree, understanding the other person's point of view, understanding how important it is to the other person. So I'll give you an example. Like, we were both very aligned that our kids would be always brought up in one religion. and not two. Because I'm a Jain, he's a Catholic. We were always very, very clear that one religion, whichever one it is chosen, not two, no confusion. Because we both very strongly believe that religion...
I'm a byproduct of half and half, so I understand. I was neither here nor there, so I understand that.
So, because we believe that religious values have a huge impact on moral upbringing. And we wanted to give our kids a very strong moral upbringing. So we said one religion. Then we spoke about how will we decide. And, at some point it came up that it would matter a lot to his parents if their grandchildren were brought up as Catholics. So we said, yes, we will do this. And it also came up later on when we were getting married. Denzel was made to sign an affidavit by the Catholic Church saying that he would bring up his kids as Catholics. They never put pressure on me, never forget pressure, never even discussed conversion to me. But the condition of being allowed to get married in the church was that your kids will be raised up as Catholics. So it played out well at that point. And my parents knew the expectation was set even before we got married. So nobody questioned it later.
Yeah, because that was unilateral thought process.
Yeah.
Got it. No, that's great advice.
And even today, for every small thing about how family time will be spent, how family holidays will be, no compromise on family holidays, even if there's a big tournament, all those things we discuss. We may argue while discussing. We come to an answer. To the kids, we are a common front. This is what this family is going to do. And also it helps because we are both born and brought up in Bombay. Yeah. Same year, we have passed out SSC in 1996.
Sort of familiarity.
Laughed at the same jokes, played the same games in school, though we didn't know each other till college. So I think a lot of value systems are also similar.
So I think it's more about value systems have to align to begin with.
Yeah.
Then there has to be maturity in thinking, which causes alignment and sacrifice.
And communication. No, sacrifice is the wrong word. No sacrifices.
Okay.
It's not a sacrifice. You are agreeing something for something and after you agree on, you have to fully commit and believe in that.
Yeah.
It's not a sacrifice. You are not doing any sacrifice. You are doing it because you love your family. I never look at it as a sacrifice.
That's also a very interesting thought process.
Yeah, I don't think I've sacrificed anything for my family, and nobody should. If it feels like a sacrifice, it's wrong.
Okay. But did you also find that growing up with young children, like for my mom, she would always feel like she wished she could spend more time with me growing up?
Yeah.
Is that a conflict that you've also faced
100%.
Trying to meet your professional goals?
Yeah, the guilt kills you.
Yeah.
Guilt kills you. But I feel, by the way, that even Denzel experiences that guilt, not only me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but I have now a sense of pride where now, obviously I'm a lot older than your kids, but now there's a sense of pride as to understanding the sacrifices that we made.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more respect there.
Yeah. I think I want my kids to respect me for my hard work.
Yeah, that's what.
For my commitment to whatever I do, whether it's work, whether it's them. They know that after work, they are my most important commitment, or rather work and them are equally committed. I don't give that much importance to socializing. I don't even feel that much need because so much of my time is going in thinking about my family. I've also had personal goals. So I don't know, this is something that you're privy to, but in 2020, I started learning Bharatanatyam.
Oh.
And Denzel pushed me to have an extraordinary goal. And as I said, we have family goals. So I did my Arangetram in 4 years.
Oh, lovely.
So I found the time to practice. Denzel took over a lot of work with the family, studies, traveling for tournaments, everything, because there was a time of about 3 months where I was practicing for 1 or 2 hours daily and work couldn't suffer. So he took over. And because I did this, I can give those examples to my children when they are facing a tough moment, when Aaron is facing a tough moment with his squash, or Ayan is facing a tough moment with, his debating or anything. They respect the advice they're getting from me because they know I lived it.
100%.
Yeah.
And they've grown up in a household which values hard work.
Yeah.
And it's not just hard work in professional capacities, it's beyond that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So I usually end with one is, what is the best piece of advice that you received and you've inculcated throughout your life? And second, and more importantly, as someone who's lived a lot of life and has experienced so many things, what advice would you give me or to any listener who's watching within the 20 to 25-year-old age bracket for us to live a fulfilling life the manner in which you have?
So I think the best advice I would like to say is the Abinger way that I got. It's that you can only control what you give. You can only control your own mind. You don't have control over anything that's happening outside of that. And if you make that the excuse, you actually lose control of the situation. Control the input, do the best. And I'm not saying don't expect, of course expect, but be patient. That helps you be full and, you find satisfaction in what you gave. So you're always using that as a measure of success and not the output. Even on a daily basis. So I self-evaluate every night before sleeping. Like, how did my day go? What did I achieve? What happened? And the great thing is that that's completely shifted to input. That did I spend my hours productively? Was my day productive? Did I, do a lot of work which will help me in the future or build something in the future? And if that answer is yes, I'm pretty happy and satisfied. For 20 to 25-year-olds, apart from this part, I think this advice that was given to me, hopefully you all also live by that. So my advice to 20 to 25-year-olds is that you all are at the best times of your life, okay? Whether it's health, physical health, ability to explore new things, ability to take risks. So go out and be as exploratory. I don't know if that's a word, but explore as much as you can. Take risks, do new things. This is the time to invest in yourself. So do not shy away from hard work. Okay, what I've seen is, and I always have this, it's my pet peeve with young kids like y'all, is that when it comes to grade 10, grade 12, y'all put in so much hard work. Oh my God. And then when it comes to actually living the result of that, which is the work that y'all get to do, y'all want to chill at that time. This is the time to put in great amount of work into the work that you're doing, right? Professionally, build out yourself. These are your golden years to give input into yourself for your professional life. Work very hard. Everything that is thrown at you, take it, do it. If X is asked, do 2X. Not because you want to, to show someone, but because you will grow while doing that 2X. This is not the time to chill. That time will come. Even if you're chilling, find things that open up your mind in that time. Second is, I also see that this generation, what I love about this generation is that they own up and are happy to talk about, what they're thinking, how they're going, what they're going through, whether it's ups and downs mentally, feeling low. Great. I'm really happy that you're that self-aware and confident to speak about it. Don't make it an excuse. That's not an excuse to sit at home. You have to show up at whatever you're doing in spite of that. Third, I would say is invest in relationships. The relationships that you make right now will be the bedrock for your future. So whether it's your friends, family, spend a little bit of time with them. And go out and have fun.
Perfect. And is there any question that you would leave for my next guest coming up?
What is the cost of following your passion? And what is the reward of the cost you pay?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kranti.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.